Hello, everyone. Kicking off another session of our deep dive series to explore different topics and conversations and host some of our brilliant partners and collaborators to host us in that discussion. So today, our conversation is titled The Fabric of Our Ocean, and we'll really be exploring among other things, but the role that art plays in addressing our climate crisis, and and how we've been doing that specifically with one designer, Runa Ray, in a collection featuring algae-based fashion. And I see. Okay, cool. I'm gonna patch her in.
Okay.
Perfect. How are you?
Fine. How are you doing, Cassia? Lovely to see you.
I'm good. Happy Friday. How are you?
I'm good. Wonderful week.
Wonderful.
For you guys, I think there's some wonderful work happening.
Yeah, and thank you so much, and likewise. Really excited to share with our audience the fantastic project and collection that you've been building and the project that we've been working on together. Just to kick it off, and for our audience, would you give a brief introduction to who you are, your background, and what brought you to this focus?
Of course. So I'm Runa Ray. I'm a fashion environmentalist and a documentary designer. I work with the United Nations on various SDG goals focusing on climate action. I started my company in 2012 by using surplus fabrics and making jackets because I realized that there was so much of wastage that was being generated by the corporates. I myself come from a corporate background, having worked with luxury industries in Paris and corporates around the world. It was in 2016 when I decided to do something which is alternative with design. And at the New York Fashion Week, I launched the origami collection, which was a zero-stitch collection. That was the first advent into getting into something which was carbon neutral, where we do not have the carbon footprint of machines. The second collection saw me using the chlorophyll that was extracted from the discarded flower markets to eradicate the use of digital prints, and so on and so forth. So I tried using a lot of nature solutions, tried to revive a lot of indigenous ways of creating collections. And here I am with you, Cassia, with the new algae collection. Glad to be here.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for that background, and really inspiring to hear more about your work and the way that you're elevating those really needed conversations through this modality. I'd love to begin our conversation with talking about human interconnectivity with the ocean. And primarily, I think, this may be familiar to some, but it also may be news to others who might not feel a direct connection to the ocean if you don't live directly on the shores or on the coastline. But all of us are reliant on a healthy ocean. Actually, more than 50% of the oxygen we breathe is produced by algae in the ocean. So that's every second breath is coming from the ocean. And beyond that, around half of human population is reliant on their primary source of protein coming from the ocean. And we're very reliant on our shorelines for protecting us from natural disasters. The ocean is absorbing heat and carbon dioxide, and our forefront hero addressing the climate crisis. So there are many reasons, but I do want to highlight specifically that reliance on algae. These tiny plant-based heroes in our ocean who are producing the oxygen that we do breathe. And I think your collection really brings that to light a little bit further. Could you share with us a little bit more about this particular story? What brought you to use algae throughout this period, throughout the pandemic, and what material are you using there? Yeah.
So, like you said, Cassia, algae has been around for like billions of years. It's been found fossilized in the Vindhya Basin since like 1.6 and 1.7 billion years ago. It primarily uses photosynthesis, you're correct, and it is found almost everywhere. Now, the algae that I have used is cyanobacteria, and this is mostly found because of human activity. And it starts off in like probably early summer till like late fall, and after that you don't get it around. It's almost simple as like when you would ask somebody what's the history of tea, or how did it come into existence. It's a thing like when you have like the king sitting down and sipping his pot of boiling water when you had like these, the tea leaves that fell into it and caused this infusion of tea. Or like the empress who was sitting by and who had a cocoon that fell into her tea and realized that you could unravel it, and that was like the silk that was being formed. The similar thing happened to me when I was walking by the shores in Half Moon Bay, and this was during the peak of the pandemic. And we had acquainted ourselves at that time during the Oceans Week in July. And I kept thinking about all the sustainable talks and everything that was happening around the world. And it really bothered me that you had a lot of countries, like the developing countries like Bangladesh and India, that the workers were not being paid. And at the same time, you also had so much of fabric that was sitting around that could actually clothe us for decades, if we did it right. And even garments. We've started getting into the concept of educating people about how detrimental. Is it my speaker?
Yeah, I hear a little bit of interference, but it's mostly okay though. Keep going.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, so it wanted to think as to how I could probably help in this, and I'm a great propagator of nature-based solutions. So when I saw this, when I saw algae, I knew there was some potential to it. There was nature that could be used for the solution itself. And I decided to go ahead and, of course, get in touch with you guys because you guys were doing fantastic work. And, and the fact that you use art and science and help educate a lot of people was something that really drove me to thinking about this partnership. And I was like, why don't we work together and help people understand that we really do not need that many clothes. And as designers, it's important, and as non-profits to kind of join forces and see how we can make a difference in this world. So that's how it started. Yeah.
Fantastic, and thank you for also sharing more about the history and the choice of materials, and yeah, just to tie that back, algae were the first photosynthetic organisms on the planet, creating oxygen, which actually ultimately then created the ozone layer, establishing our atmosphere and making the Earth habitable to life like us. So it's really quite a beautiful origin story, and I think likewise, very thrilled to see how the pieces that you've been creating are also so beautiful in themselves, but the fact that they're purely made from algae, there's nothing else that's added into that. It's really just the algae cleaned and stripped, and in the fantastic and magical ways of your creation, formed into these beautiful pieces and into the collection. Could you share with us a little bit more actually about that process? So how does the algae go from the shores? And Half Moon Bay is in California, by the way, which is where Runa has been quarantining during this period, and so it's been a new environment, a new atmosphere to explore, and immediately you're finding new materials. And so I think that also just speaks to the fact that we can find inspiration and materials wherever we are, and often the best materials to use are those around us and those that are local, and can tell that story of rooted in where we actually are currently. So so could you just share with us a little bit more about that process, and ultimately what it looks like? And we're really excited to then be able to, as we launch this, to share that with our audiences.
Yeah, so algae is a very, very tricky substance to work with. The characteristics is that it's really slippery. It's not easy to basically have. And the beauty of it is that in contact with water, it gets to be algae. So it's very difficult to actually process the fabric of the ocean. But the beauty is that you get it collected, you get to clean it of its impurities because it's got like the sand, it's got like little shells in it. And once that's done, you obviously you get to dry it, and it's almost like molding the ocean into the garments of your dreams, because the beauty is that it's so transparent and it's so delicate that even the smallest amount of light could light the entire fiber up. I've never seen, when you talk about optical, this is the best. So yeah, it's simple yet it's complex, but it probably, I would tell somebody, it takes like weeks to like months to create collections of this sort, because the nature is of algae is so delicate. Yeah, so if you're going to be sharing the images that we've been working on and discussing, the people would probably understand how important it is.
Yeah.
And how difficult could actually be, but like easy as complex.
Absolutely, and I think for that reason that the pieces are more of an exhibit, right, rather than something to create at mass scale and to sell as actual garments, just because they are so delicate in that nature. And but really showing what is possible, allowing us to dream and to see what it's really more of an art and emotive piece in that sense. For us to think about what could be possible, and also just to rethink our choices, as you said. If we have all these clothes, why are we constantly buying new clothes? Why do we need new clothes every season? Why can't we just be repurposing and sharing and thrifting and creating more of these secondhand markets and relying on them? Even through COVID, and there are certainly still safe ways to be doing that. I know a lot of us have taken time to actually go through and clean out our closets, and as we're nesting and spending so much time in our homes, and so it's been interesting because there's more of a flux out than there is in. So more people are donating clothes than are purchasing or finding clothes from those secondhand markets, and so actually those markets are a little bit saturated. So we can support on the consumer side of that by increasing the demand there, because right now there is a huge supply actually, and I know it's very convenient and easy just to order things at home as we're stuck there, but just a shout out for that. And I also wanted to talk, Runa, I think this collection touches upon various aspects, but it also really does help us address the issue of microplastics shedding from clothing, and so 60% of clothing is created from synthetic textiles and synthetic fibers that actually shed these microfibers when they're washed in the laundry, and going straight out into our waterways and our water systems. Most wastewater treatment plants do not actually filter and take those pieces out, so they're passing straight out into our rivers, into the ocean. And actually, over the course of a year, around 50 billion plastic bottles worth is dumped into the ocean via plastic microfibers. So can you share how this collection actually represents an alternative, regenerative, plant-based path forward for the fashion industry?
I always believe in circularity in fashion. So and I do agree with you, there's a lot of microfiber shedding that's happening, and eventually it also gets ingested by the fish, and we are, eventually it's ending up in us.
Yeah.
So we do not want that kind of circularity, right? We do not want the negative circularity. So we look at something which is positive. So whether you're having garments which could turn into fodder for crops, or whether you're talking about algae being used, where you have a lot of people right now using algae and seaweed where they're making textile out of it. Because if you look at recycling plastic and making them into fibers, it's extremely expensive. And it does not solve the problem. This collection is mostly about educating people and looking at nature-based solutions and getting people to understand that less is more. So the solution lies within ourselves. So we need to be more conscious of the choices that we make. And that will probably help the well-being of the planet.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that just simplicity and recommendation of less is more. How can we reduce and just use what's already available? And I haven't heard that before, but that negative circularity, that's absolutely true. It's a system that we do want to move away from, and we don't want to be ingesting plastic because we're still learning about how that's impacting us negatively. We know that it does. There are chemicals that are endocrine disruptors, interfering with the body's ability to communicate with itself, potentially causing developmental defects and cancers. But there also could be other effects of hormone imbalances that we've still yet to fully explore and understand. And so shifting towards a circularity that is genuine, that is healing, that is nourishing, and that makes more sense for all. So I'd like to, I know we're getting close to the end of our time here. I'd love to just ask if you have any closing thoughts and recommendations too. I think the collection of the piece really does highlight what is possible. And we have spoken through a series of solutions here, but perhaps if there's one action our audience here could take today, what is it that you'd recommend?
What I would like to tell you is, everybody here and the audience, is that try to find the correlation between food and fashion. It's almost very similar. What you have on the plate, please try to consume it, because at the end of the day, poverty is the number one challenge we're facing in the world. So do not waste your food. Similarly, when it comes to fashion, please buy what you will use and use what you will buy. It's as simple as that. If you make that choice, you yourself are contributing hugely to the environment. And last but not the least, support non-profits like Oceanic Global as artists, as designers, as people, because you guys are doing a fantastic job.
Thank you so much, Runa, and I really love your words. I think that's so beautifully put. Buy what you will use and use what you will buy. I think that's a beautiful mantra to remember, and a path towards circularity there. So thank you again so much also for supporting us. We were so thrilled and honored to work with you on this project. It's been a learning process on both sides, and honestly, we cannot wait to share the images of what Runa has created. She's an incredibly talented designer, really bringing this to life, and her extended experience with the UN, really figuring out ways to creatively message and communicate these issues has been fantastic and is clear from the work that she's creating. So please do check out Runa, and we're excited to share and launch this collection very soon. Thank you all. Have a lovely weekend.
You too, Cassia.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.